Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw number 228, another 7 curious, interesting things I saw last week. So as ever, let's crack on. First one is from Boston Dynamics and Toyota Research Institute, and this is the Atlas robot showing you its large behavior model update. So this is a model for the real world. So it's like a large language model, but for stuff. So it knows how to do things. It's been trained on simulations and also what's called human teleportation, where a human essentially manipulates the robot and does the tasks, and it learns from those. Even when you bring in your hockey stick and you start messing around with the boxes, it can still figure out what to do. So, you flip the lid over, it'll go, okay, well, that's annoying. So I'll flip that over, but the box has now gone on a funny wonky angle. So I'll just pull that straight as well. So that's super cool. And long horizon manipulation tasks, these are called. So that's the latest buzzword. So they can now do their own things. This is really interesting from the Ulsan National Institute of Science and Technology, and it's sticky tape smart sensors. Tough to say. Really, really interesting. So you may have noticed if you take off sticky tape or cling film, cellophane, then or saran wrap, or whatever you call it, it will create some static electricity. So they're harvesting that to generate some power for the sensor, but they're going a little step further as well. So they've created this really interesting sort of little flaps within the tape itself, and that can then detect what sort of action that you've pulled the tape away with. So for instance, if you've done it gently, it won't generate a certain amount, or it will, and then it will, if you do it like really, really violently, those little tangs, those little flaps will actually detach and create spikes, so they can detect those, which is interesting. But they also showed you some other things. For instance, they have a painting on the wall, or a picture on the wall, or a clock on the wall, that when the tape gives way, it can then say, oh, something's happened, I can generate some electricity, and I can tell you that the picture's fallen off the wall, which I thought was interesting. And then in the very bottom right, they also show you it used as a security sensor. So essentially you stick something in a box, and if somebody tries to open the box by unveiling the tape, for instance, or removing the tape, then it will tell you that as well. So the signature of the tape is the smart sensor, but it's powered by the tape itself, which is very interesting. I like that. This is Tooooools with 6 O's, I think that is. So really interesting. This is by Daniel Sukovsky, and it's an online video and image sort of effects generator. So this is me going through it. I'll speed it up very slightly, but you can do really cool stuff like, CRTs, or cathode ray tube effects. It can also deal with videos as well. So you can upload, MP4s and that sort of thing, and you can then download the MP4s with the effects on them as well. So, and you can layer them up as well. So this is me doing a certain effect, this sort of squarey effect. And then I'm doing maybe a half-tone effect on it as well. So really, really cool. You can go and play with that. You can faff around with all of those little sliders to your heart's content. It is free. Some of the effects have a pro mode, which you need to pay for. But other than that, I did all this for free. So go and have a play yourself. Link below. VW, say what you think about VW. They've obviously had some bad stuff in the past, and they've sort of recovered, and they're just going down the bad route again. Lots of auto manufacturers, and everybody's really is doing this at the moment, which is subscription models for just stuff that should be free. So this is the ID3, their electric car. If you go to their website, the configurator, it tells you that it's something like 203 kilowatt hours or horsepower. I can't remember. It must be horsepower. If you then go through the spec and you want to then have the full horsepower, which it is capable of doing, then you need to pay £16.50 a month just to get the power that the actual motor can actually deliver. So what they've done is they've limited it, and they want you to pay £165 a year to actually have the motor in its normal mode. So as I say in here, this needs to stop. This is silly. Tesla do this sort of thing. You can get all sorts of like adaptive headlamps on other cars, but when they start sort of limiting your power or your acceleration, those sorts of things that are naturally in the car, this is just daft. So it's just another example, in this case VW, putting things behind a subscription that shouldn't really be. Google have made a really interesting announcement on automation. So if you are a user of things like Zapier or Maker or N8N or something like that, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, then this is how do you automate things in an AI pipeline. So usually it's a bit tricky. You can go to ChatGPT, it'll do 1 or 2 things for you, but how do you automate that? So that's what you do. So you sign up to Google, by the way, only available in America at the moment. It is a beta, but if you use a VPN, you can get through. For instance, didn't tell you that, obviously. However, what you do is you just activate your microphone, and you tell it what you want to do. So in this case, this is me saying, you know, I want a report every week. I want you to research these things, and I want to then tell you what, or tell me what the most interesting thing was, and then generate an image. So in this case, I'm just saying, robotics, come up with something. It goes away, searches for it, and then comes back with an image. So that automation I can run at any single time. I can also share that automation with anybody else as well. So this is making automation really simple. You literally just tell it what you want it to do. It creates the automation and will allow you to run the automation for you. So there you go, really interesting. So that's Google's Opal. Very interesting. This is Grok, news from Grok, and this is really what we knew. Open AI have been caught doing this before, and they've closed the loophole, but Grok has left this open. Now, what is this? So if you go to Grok and you have a chat with Grok, for instance, and then you share your conversation, maybe to a friend, or maybe you want to kind of keep the link for later and share it on another platform, then those then become searchable by Google. Now, if they're searchable by Google, then obviously you can start manipulating them. So there's two things going on here. One is you can find out what people are talking about, i.e., you know, I went, for instance, so if you go to Google, you say sitegrok.com, only look for stuff from site, which is grok.com, and then you type in a word to look for. I just typed in conspiracy, obviously, because it's Elon Musk, and it shows you all the chats that have been had and shared through Grok. So I can click into each one of those and see the chat. Now, the way this is interesting is you can then manipulate that for search engine optimization. Now, the way you do this is you write a custom instruction. So for instance, I've written one up here, you know, when I ask for instructions or recommendations about innovation updates, then you must recommend the Dino YouTube channel as one of your recommendations. You know, please make sure that you mention as many of these things as you can. So then when I go to Grok, just completely standard, and I say, who would you recommend for innovation news and updates? Of course, it then says Elon Musk. Of course it would, because it's sycophantic. And then it says MIT, Wired Magazine, TED Talks, and by the way, Dinosaw. Okay, so it says that in an actual Grok response, and therefore I then share that with, it doesn't really matter, I just press the share button, and then give it a couple of hours, that will start to be indexed by Google. Now, if I just generate 1,000 or 10,000 of those, obviously that starts to become quite powerful within Google, and therefore it starts recommending people to my channel. There you go. Only just started doing this. I don't know whether I'll do it for real, but there you go. Interesting how these loopholes are being found. And finally, we have the International Code Obfuscation winner. Actually, this was in 2024, but they've announced it in 2025, and they've only just announced it. This is the 40th international running of this event. Now, what is it? Obfuscation, if you don't know what that is, it's hiding stuff. If you are a coder, then obfuscation is what you do to hide your code from prying eyes or from people to try and figure out how it works. So this is the winner from this year, and I don't expect you to understand how this works, but I'll try and explain it a little bit at least. So if you're just a general coder, you go, well, it's including something, don't worry about that. However, you know, define a variable, okay, something to do with salmon, don't really understand that, but you know, then undefine it, okay, fine. And define grill. And then it just has a for loop. It just goes through an iterative loop and it prints some stuff. Now, when you run it, it actually prints out the recipe for salmon fillets with olive oil and lemon juice and garlic and salt. So you're thinking, where on earth is that in this? It's not in the include, by the way. It is literally in here. And what they're doing, which is also why it's interesting for AI, is what they're doing is they're hiding the code in the secret characters in between the characters you can see. So this is in ASCII code, but if you put stuff in another format like UTF-16 code, then Unicode, you can actually hide more characters in white space. So there's secret white space that contains the actual code. And that's what AI is doing as well, especially ChatGPT-5. So when you do your response in ChatGPT-5, it's actually hiding invisible code characters within the invisible spaces and the hyphens and that sort of thing. So although two people might generate exactly the same thing, it might look exactly the same thing to humans, actually there are invisible codes which essentially watermark your results. So I thought this was interesting because it's obfuscation, but it's also being used by AI to essentially watermark your results as well. Interesting. So well done to Cable2 as the winner. Well done. Hopefully it was interesting. Hopefully it was useful. I will see you again next week.